you check the children? Show a little match
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime in Fuego, and I am joined today by a very special guest.
Marcia Becker!
Hell yeah. And if it please you, join us here for a bit of palaver on Hail! The Stephen King. Yeah, I'm still pretty close to the microphone, so sorry if there were any eardrums, including Marcia's, that were messed up with my screaming. Peeps joke about this all the time. But yes, guys, obviously, bienvenidos and welcome to the horror show. And I really wanted Marcia here. It was maybe about a month or so ago when this series first premiered its initial 2 episodes on Apple TV Plus, just to give first thoughts and stuff, because it's such a lady-centric, sort of show between the sisterhood and so many of the themes and the perspective that they take with Lacey Landon's character. We didn't get to do that, so I gave my initial thoughts, and now the series, as of this past Friday, has concluded, and you can watch all 8 episodes of Apple TV's LISEY'S story, and every screenplay, every single episode of this was actually written by Stephen King himself. I think it's the biggest undertaking for like a series he has done probably since Golden Years, but I mean, we know that he scripted like The Shining and the 1994 Stand, so he's done work for TV before, but this is definitely one of the biggest and, for my estimation, most ambitious, especially from a visual standpoint, of really any Sai King project. And the fact that he loves this one so much, I don't know if you're aware of this, Marcia, he has actually gone on record to say this is his favorite and most personal book of anything that he's ever written.
I can see that based on the material.
Mm-hmm. It was inspired by, in the mid-2000s, Sai King, only a couple of years after he got run over and almost died, he, a few years later, got double pneumonia and almost died again. And so what ended up happening was his wife, Tabby, when he was in the hospital and on the verge of death, she actually decided to go and redecorate his office, like his workspace. So she moved everything around in his little studio area where he does all of his writing and hangs out and works and stuff. And when he came back after recovering, he went and he looked around and he was just like, shit, this is what it would feel like if I died. And I, in some ghostly manner, was able to see my office being moved around and kind of cleared out and stuff, and it inspired this story. The initial book was published in, I believe, November of 2006, so it's 15 years old now, but he really wanted to adapt this one himself because of how close it was to his heart, kind of a love letter a bit to his wife and their relationship. And, marriages have their secrets, as they say throughout this. And I'm not married, but you are, so I'm sure you can speak at least a little bit to, there has to be something personal that the rest of the world is never going to understand. And they really explore this a lot in this series. And what are overall thoughts for you about just the fact that Sai King wrote like a full-on romance here? And he's never really done this sort of thing, which is why I find it so fascinating. So lay it on the Hail Ka-Tet.
Yeah, it is very Stephen King romance, right? That is an interesting way to put it. Obviously, the main character is a writer, and the wife kind of went along with the ride. Like, he wasn't always famous, and they kind of built their lives together and made sure that the fame was separated from their selves and their marriage, so that way they can keep a piece of them together, which
something
is really
separate and sacred is
which was really nice, and it was really refreshing. But I loved this, like, besides the love story at all, like the whole complete story was fascinating. The aspect of the writer's life and his relationship with his family and how that affected everything else, and her relationship with her sisters, and how, like, catty they are, and
very much so.
Very catty and different, and they all come together and love each other in their own way and celebrated by each other in different ways, which is really refreshing. And there was times where, like, Pete was like, damn, like, that girl just doesn't stop. And I'm like, yeah.
I know which character I think you're talking about, too.
But,
it's the baby.
It was really, the way they did it was interesting, because there is a lot of time jumping, a lot of world jumping, and you really have to be paying attention to understand like the flow, but it makes sense along the storyline. So like it does flow. Like you're not feeling like you're time jumping. Someone is telling you the story. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly.
No, you totally are, because it's seamless in the fact that things in the present time, they bring on like a new sense of importance when there's these seamless transitions back to stuff when her husband Scott was still alive.
Right, when he was alive, his interactions with her, and like his interactions with his family. And they are placed specifically in the moment of the story timeline, so it makes sense according to the story. So it was really well done, and it makes a lot of sense that Stephen King would want to be such a vital role in like building out this series storyline for the miniseries. I don't think there's going to be more than this.
Nope. This is a contained limited
series.
It's
it's like a miniseries, but it was, I don't know, it was beautiful. It was beautifully shot, well acted. The story was fantastic. I never read the source material. So I don't have a place point for that, but it was really
did, Marcia, but it was like at least 6 years ago, maybe even more so. So there was like the skeletal structure, totally remembered. And I did pick up on a few things that were added, like a character here or there, expansion on things here and there. The structuring was a little bit different, but not that far off. So I'm not one who is gonna, like, we are reviewing the series, everybody, because I know some of the Hale people, they're like, oh, well, why aren't you making mention of this alteration or that alteration? And Marcia has a very funny idea for a meta sketch that we want to do about those who over-scrutinize everything about adaptations. But as we said in the pre-production before we filmed this, Stephen King scripted all of these himself, so any changes he made, he felt were either improving or just maybe helping with the visual presentation of the story, because it's a completely different medium, and stories have to adapt, I think, in that case.
And what was interesting, you're learning 3 or 4 different stories that you're
this
being
is
told
Laird.
in one story, an overarching story, you know, and it's fascinating, because each part of it is like, oh, it's almost like watching like a Stephen King version of like Game of Thrones in a way, because there's so many different layers and everything is connected, and every little part affects the other part, and it's very much about like our interwebs of our own social networks, right?
Yeah,
because
whether it's siblings or whether it's your partner or
your partner
or those
family.
you've worked with, perhaps, or those who adore you. In the case of Scott, your fans and contemporaries, or just those who admire your work. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and I also appreciate the fact that it's slow reveals for certain things. We are going to get into spoilers, just to forewarn everybody in this. We're going to go through those different facets, and not going to go insanely detailed, but we're not going to hold back, obviously. And I like the fact that what really happens with Scott, as Scoot, as his abusive father calls him as a kid, they don't reveal what happens with his brother Paul until later in the season. They don't reveal the ultimate fate of his father, or even how Scott really died. Do you think Scott dies one way? Find out near the end of the series that no, he actually passed away in a different fashion, and the nuances of the sisterhood to have this triumvirate and this trio dynamic. And I think as far as improvements go, if I'm remembering correctly, I love the fact that there were 3 of them, and that they were all kind of squabbly, and they were all kind of damaged to a degree. One has a presumably crumbling marriage. Lisey has lost her husband, and the other one has lost her husband to running off to another woman's, and just the mental damage that causes. And that's another thing this series explores a lot, is the nature of mental illness. It's very prevalent throughout, and whether certain otherworldly things that they later on get to are actual, or whether somebody is just, between their upbringing and various other factors, how stable they are. And they do say that lots of the most creative people are a little bit crazy and a little mentally unstable, and so they explore that here too. But I was so impressed with this. I can see why the structuring of the narrative may be jarring for people, but it's just to double down on the very insightful thing Marcia said. You have to pay attention. Yeah. This is a series where you can't just have it on often in the background, and because of those time jumps, because certain things are revealed in those quick little shifts, and in a singular scene, you will shift from something happening then to something before. There's lots of dream stuff, lots of recollection, and goddamn is it beautiful. It's one of the prettiest and highest production values that I have seen. Maybe It Part 1. I know you didn't like it from a storytelling standpoint, but that was where I was like, okay, with Stephen King stuff, they're really upping production value significantly. I know that's
fair.
That was a theatrical film, but all of the more recent things that they have done since The King Assance in 2017, they're not really skimping on much aside from maybe that shitty Dark Tower movie. So, as far as performance, how impressed were you, or the lack thereof, with Julianne Moore in this lead role?
I thought she did a fantastic job. I mean, I was in it. Like, it takes a lot because, life is busy, and especially, with me having little ones running around all the time, it's hard to, like...
Bless your heart.
focus on a show. In this one, it pulled me in, and a big part of it was the acting, and not just for Julianne Moore, but everyone that was involved. They did such a great job.
No missing link for sure.
No, it was well casted in, and also to tag into what you were saying about the beautifully shot, like I have to give it up for Apple TV for sure, because everything that I've seen off of Apple TV, I feel like they set a bar, like you have to hit this bar, otherwise we're not going to show it, because everything I've seen on there, even like the silly comedy stuff that I've seen on there, have been beautifully shot. And
Servant, which we reviewed, is terrific. Ted Lasso, as you were saying, and there's a lot of other movies I still haven't gotten to. They've got the Foundation series I'm really stoked for. They are really trying to go after the Netflix and Prime, and they are really trying to stand toe-to-toe, and maybe since they don't have as much original programming, maybe they can even inject more money into it. And that's Apple money, guys. I mean, come on. I'm glad they're putting it to an interesting use besides their electronics.
Yeah, and I was like pretty reluctant, and then I realized that I had access to Apple TV because I'm on like a family Apple plan of media content, and then my brother's like, yeah, Apple TV's part of that.
It's only $4.99 a month too. It's like so much cheaper than a lot of other streamers.
My brother pays like $10 a month for the family plan, and we get unlimited music and unlimited Apple TV.
You get that too. Damn.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
I was like, I was using it for the music, and then I found out I could watch it for Apple TV, and I was like, this is amazing. And everything I've watched off of there has just been beautiful. But yeah, back to the acting. Clive Owens, the crazy guy.
Clive Owen and Julianne Moore reuniting. They did Children of Men together, which is friggin' awesome. I love that movie.
The chemistry between those two in this is amazing.
I was watching with Catherine, and she was like tearing up during some of these really tender scenes between the two of them, baby love, and just how she saved him, because he obviously has this really rough upbringing that they show in these flashbacks with a mentally ill father, and with the fact that he's a cutter, and that's what makes you wonder. And there is some ambiguity to the storytelling. I know we're kind of jumping around everybody, but there is a essence of, okay, how crazy was this person? Was his brother possessed in that scene? I mean,
that kid was amazing.
He was great. He really was.
So cool.
Especially during the sweet moments during the bull hunts earlier, and they're sharing the soda, and then he's like, "I wish Dad was dead," and you're just like, "Whoa," from the resentment of the abuse, because it's a weird paradigm of both abuse, but then also, and I guess it's a hallmark of abusive relationships, right? Where
really
somebody will be physically and mentally abused, but then the person in control goes back and is like, I love you so much, and then
I do this because I love you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it turns out that it's like, he really had no choice. He's really just trying to help them survive this world that they're being pulled into, and he was trying to make sure that they wouldn't be turned bad, and they wouldn't get gone, that they would
because
survive it together.
And I love that difference of the fact that you can go bad, but there is a possibility of kind of bringing yourself back. But if you're gone, dunzo, cut it out. There's nothing else that you can really do. And I saw that as a metaphor for mental illness, which happens with Amanda, with the older sister, and the fact that she is also a cutter, just like Scott Landon and just like his father before him. And, those who are just feeling tortured and depressed from things outside of their control, whether it's an abusive father, rough upbringing without a mother, or whether it's just like with Amanda early on, where she crushes the cup and is cutting herself up because she's so depressed her husband has left her for this other woman. I mean, you can be bad, but once you're gone, it's like you're off the deep end, and it's like there's no turning back, and it's dense in
There's
its
so
ideas.
many, like you said, there's so
much.
many layers, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting that Catherine really dug into, not that it's interesting, but like she focused on the relationship, the husband-wife relationships. And for me, like, that was what was really killing me was the brothers. I mean, I have two sons. So, like, watching the sons, like, the two brothers, like, be there for each other.
And the disparity in age, I felt, too. Like, that it was, like, a very clear set big brother, little brother sort of thing. And the performances from both of them were great, too. Especially,
so amazing.
Especially young Scooter. Scoot, I mean, the stuff he has to go through and do as well.
Oh,
you know? I mean,
it's really tough stuff.
Yeah, the reveal in the final episode with what he has to do with the father and the pickaxe and everything, and I know Stephen King has thrown a lot of people down wells, whether it's Dolores Claiborne or 1922, and we do have that happen again, but just the amount that when we see how strong and successful Scott has become for everything that he had to endure and get past, like, damn, and then
and talk about it like, oh yeah, that was just my childhood,
nonchalantly.
like it's cool, right? And it's funny because, like, I feel like at times, like, everybody has their stories of growing up, like, and there'll be times where I'm having a conversation of my childhood, and people look at me like, how did you survive that? I'm like, what do you mean? It was 1983. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So it's, and it's funny because my childhood, don't get me wrong, was not to the extent of Scott Landon, but at the same time, because people grow up different ways, it could feel like that to somebody. And so I got a little bit of that too, and kinship with Scott, like how he was able to overcome and endure and overcome and just kind of move forward and just accept life as it is, and is able to bring in his wife, like, okay, we're now forever. This is what it means. And she's like, okay, no, let's never talk about it again. Move on. And it was... Yeah,
on the honeymoon where he just laid a lot of stuff down and then also brought her into Booyah Moon.
Booyah Moon, yeah.
Booyah Moon for the first time. And she's like, that was a little much for me. And so I don't know if I want to reflect. And she, very obviously, as the narrative shows, she repressed those honeymoon memories. And it was only in this period, and like, it's 2 years after his death when we meet her initially, and she is obviously still grieving. She's not doing well. They even make up Julian more to look a little more haggard with the hair. Also, the fact that she has a lot dealing with both her mentally ill older sister Amanda, and then also this kind of capricious
super
snarkiness,
jelly, smirky,
with Darla, Jennifer Jason Leigh, the younger sister.
She's my favorite.
Yeah, but they had a very just outspoken, no candy coating whatsoever, and you're gonna tell your sibling like it is. And I love that aspect of the story too. So the elements of family exploration, and then the love, and I enjoyed the wedding scene flashbacks and the soul band playing, and just those
cool.
intimate moments were so good. But we haven't really touched much upon as we round out story and go into kind of the tail end of this. Yeah, so it's psychological thriller, it's romance, but it's Stephen King, and so we get a world jumping sort of thing where you can step into another dimension, and all of the analogies about this pool, and the pool has a couple meanings in this, because Scott, he describes it as a reservoir of inspiration, and that all creatives, writers, filmmakers, whatever, they dip into this pool, but it's almost like
infatuation as well.
Yeah, and it's almost like staring into the darkness, and if you do it too long, it comes along with you. The way they visualized it, especially, I thought was really fascinating, because the pool was surrounded almost by like an outdoor crumbling amphitheater of sorts, where there's a bunch of other people who are entranced by this water, and it kind of embodied the fact that if you look into the inspiration too long, you lose sight of a lot. And that's where Scott says later in the series,
he's like, you have to, right?
Yeah, he's like, you have to. Sometimes you can't overthink it and just stare at it too long. You have to let a story just run and figure itself out and write itself, as opposed to just overthinking it. And that's really King's philosophy. There's there is so much of King himself in this story, from his idiosyncrasies to also his philosophies. There's a lot of really fascinating things that he brings into this. And yes, it's another story about a writer. How many times has he done that, Marcia? I mean, we know that. But I
write what you know. What are you going to say?
Yeah, truly. And I love granted, it has Dark Tower parallels. It has Talisman parallels. The fact that we have doubles, people who can be in this other world and Keystone Earth, or whatever you want to call it. And then there's others who, like Lisey, they can only jump over, so they don't remain on the other side. And I think he describes them as anchors at one particular point, which is fascinating. So once again, dense stuff, but the visualization of this place, between Sweetheart Hill, between, the pool itself, and all of the creepy, the veiled characters. I'm trying to remember what they were called.
About them.
Yeah, they were interesting.
I want to know about them,
Yeah.
though. Let's talk about it.
And Lisey even asks Amanda near the end of the series a couple times, what are they? What are they? And she's like, oh, they're dead. And so there wasn't massive explanation.
No, she didn't want to talk about them.
Yeah, so that's why she gave the short answer, right?
Yeah, she's like, I don't want to talk about them.
And then we also have Longboy, which is this big creature, and I guess we can kind of segue a little bit into effects in this point.
Oh, yeah.
We've said how beautiful the show looks and how amazingly shot it was in upstate New York, and then also some in New Jersey as well. So the locales were tremendous. They obviously filmed at a time when the leaves were all changing colors and so beautiful. The shots of the pool, both of the pools, actually. But the construct of this creature, and I don't know if they went into this sort of description in the book, but it's made this long boy, this huge, ginormous, monstrous creature, sort of body horror, practically, constructed of other rotting corpses, and it is humanoid. And it's humanoid in its appearance, but man, intense stuff, and especially because you see it from afar earlier, and then when you get those better close-ups, the CGI is great. I guess without hogging too much of the discussion, what did you think when they went to this other world, and with some of the just suggestions and some of the mythology they were laying out?
I thought it was really cool, and I it made me want to know more. Like, I was like,
Would you like to know more?
Right. Like, I was like, oh man, like getting drawn in. It was very interesting because like kept me thinking, like, what is the real purpose? Like, I feel like Scott and his family have the ability to go to this world, as do others, and they draw from the pool. And then there's Longboy. Like, what is the actual purpose of this place? It would be really interesting to figure out, like, what it would be. But it is fascinating, though. Like, it is really cool. And I love Longboy. And it was terrifying. Like, when he appeared, and you're like, oh, my gosh. Like, what are they going to do with this thing? And it had attacked his brother, which infected him. And then it, like, led to, like, oh, is this
like,
how he got bad, right? There was no coming back from that. It was just this giant tormented soul that would collect them. And once you're marked, it's looking for you.
Yeah, it's like assimilating you into this huge... I don't know. And there was almost like kind of a purgatory aspect to the place, too. And the
really
fact that there were those that were dead that hadn't passed on. And then those who were obviously completely gone that were maybe, constructing this big long boy. But then there were others who were in regular clothes and were just sitting there. And even the Amanda situation and the duality of she's stuck in our world in this very poshy group home, for the mentally ill. And then yet she's also over in this other world where she's a little more cognizant. So that was further exploration of mental illness that I found fascinating. There's very few King stories that I think really could do well with a sequel or with even a short story, further epilogue or something, but the abilities that Lisey tapped into through Scott after his passing, the fact that she figured out how to start jumping back and forth, I think you could explore Lisey later in her years maybe, and if she's still going over and discovering more about Booyah and stuff, which I think could be cool. But it just occurred to me, we didn't even talk about the in this world aspect of the deranged fan, played by Dane DeHaan. And Dane DeHaan plays creepos like nobody's business, whether it was Chronicle, even in those Amazing Spider-Mans, and it was in a film, or actually it was a short series with Mika Moore, I think. She was in It Follows, the lead blonde from It Follows. He was this crazy Uber driver. So he plays a psycho creepazoid very convincingly, and dude, he He brings it in.
Oh man, it was so convincing. It was terrifying. Like at first she didn't really put a lot of weight into what he was saying to her until like
Yeah, she brushed it off.
yeah,
Croft
until like
contacts her early.
yeah, and then she's like, oh okay, well maybe I should take this seriously because he beat the crap out of her.
The pizza
and, like,
cutter.
oh my
Ugh.
gosh, like.
Yeah.
But didn't even start there. Just like the things that he was doing along the way, and
The stuff he said in some of those phone calls where he's like, I'll touch you where the boys at the junior high dance weren't allowed to.
the things that
and
I would
stuff.
do
Yeah,
to
it's
do to the
horrible.
areas that you wouldn't let the
Yeah.
boys at junior high touch. Like
He was
you're
a
like,
sick
whoa.
motherfucker. Yeah,
Like
without a doubt.
yeah, and he was angry at her. Thanks, guy. That like
And
it was-
also further exploration of mental illness.
Yep,
And
it's the other
obsession,
aspect of
just a
it.
different variety.
yeah, and like the most hostile and violent version of it.
Yeah,
and,
the obsessive fan, which we know King has done before. Annie Wilkes in Misery. He did it later on in Finders Keepers. So it's obviously, it's a theme that he's probably experienced in his personal life quite a bit. I've read a few of the articles about his weird fans who were like, you stole my ideas and stuff like that. And he's had stalkers with weapons on his properties before and whatnot. But it's obviously still heavy on his heart.
and it
all
is
these
funny
years
that
later.
they gave him a name. Like what do they call them?
Jim Dandy, like that song from the 70s.
No,
Go
no.
Jim Dandy, go Jim
No,
Dandy.
no.
I know Dooley was his
the
was
Cowboys,
name.
Space Cowboys.
Oh yeah.
They
the
call
deep
them-
space cowboys. Yeah,
Yeah.
the really obsessive fans. That
I'm wondering
are
if that's
just,
really what he calls his.
Maybe.
And it's just kind of like.
I'm
yeah.
sure him and Tabby have names for him.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. But it was really like there's just some like we keep going back to like there's just so many different layers to this story, and the fact that they play so well together to tell this whole story. This was amazing,
Indeed.
and I'm so glad you brought it up to me and like had me watch it.
I just really wanted your opinion on it.
And I was hooked in the first like 10 minutes of the show. I was like, this is my jam right here. This
even
is
the opening with like the weird puppetry and stuff,
It
I
felt
thought was
very
really
Westworld, but it was
Okay,
still pretty
yeah.
cool. I
Yeah.
still dug it.
Yeah, so I guess we've covered a lot and we've spoiled a lot, and I think most of the major bases, especially of just the heart and the essence of the series, I think we've touched upon, and the consensus seems to be that you need to, even if you just do a free trial of Apple, I don't think you need to own an Apple product to just sign up for Apple TV Plus for either a free trial or spend $4.99 and just binge this Hail Ka-Tet. I think it's really worth your while. Perhaps it's not for everybody because of some of the structuring and the other things we mentioned, but I feel like there is so much nuance and merit and just depth and intrigue and performances across the board between villainous people, between chemistry of the sisters, and especially when they come together later on. It's a beautiful show, both to look at and to see performed. So props to J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot for producing and getting this done, and it's one of the most impressive King adaptations I've seen in a great long while.
I totally agree with everything
yeah.
you just said.
Nice. Well, I have to extend, obviously, the biggest grande gracias to Marcia Parker, my co-host here, and longtime collaborator in crime here on The Horror Show. So very glad that you were able to give your, just impart some insight about this.
Well, I'm glad I got to go on this journey with you because
Hell yeah.
it definitely was worth it. So
Indeed. So check out LISEY'S story on Apple TV Plus, and I've been Jaime Fuego. You guys know the drill. You can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Here on YouTube, got Infuegotainment, my separate channel, where I've done some recent reviews of stuff like Cruella and a few others, a couple of things in the pipeline as well. So check that out if you feel inclined, and obviously like, share, subscribe here on The Horror Show. And if you would like to have further palaver about Stephen King, the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group is, waiting for you, and over 1,000 different members on there having all kinds of fun discussion.
yes, thank you.
Righteous. So once again, thank you, Marcia, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. Hopefully we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later, and thanks to Cecil for having us here at the Horror Show Studios for this recording, and remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. But, in this instance, you can definitely watch him as well. This is pretty damn good.
Yeah.